Hello, welcome. Now I know I said that the next thing I would talk about would be my tool chest I'm making. However, the chest isn't done yet, and I want to wait till it's completely done. That way I can talk about why I made it the way I did and what features I chose. But I thought I would go over these three planes today. The roughing planes, and I know I did a film on planes before where I went over their names and gave a brief description, but I want to go a little bit in depth on these ones. First is the scrub plane. Now I didn't talk about the scrub plane last time. The scrub plane comes from Germany. It's a short, narrow plane with a heavily cambered iron that's used for removing wood quickly off raw sawn or rough split lumber. The second one is the jack plane. Now I talked about the jack plane yesterday in my other plane film. And in American woodworking, the jack plane is a general purpose plane that can be used for joining, smoothing, and roughing. But originally the jack plane comes to us from England and was seen as a dedicated roughing plane. And finally is the Fore plane. The Fore plane is the last plane to come along historically, and it's called so because it is used before any other plane. Now, the scrub plane is called such because it carries with it the idea of what it's for, to scrub away the wood. And this is even remains with us in the Spanish word for plane, capillo, which is also the word for brush, which carries the idea of brushing away. And the reason the Germans came up with this is because most roughing happens across the grain of the board, and most boards are narrow, so you really don't need a wide plane. A small plane is easier to push, and since it rises the hills and valleys more than a long plane will, it will actually remove wood faster. The English, however, preferred the jack plane, and in English vernacular, jack means to rip up, tear up. This is still evidenced in the device that's used to lift the car up off the ground is called a jack, and the expression to jack up, which means to tear up, rip up, mess up. They preferred a longer roughing plane because the longer plane, because it will just hit the tops, not hit and go over the valleys. Whenever you're done with it, it will leave the board flatter. And the flatter the board is after the roughing, it means the less work you have to do with a triplane after that. Now, the jack plane in certain parts of England was also called a foreplane. In fact, the two terms were used pretty much interchangeably. Then later, as the two groups, the Germans and the English, immigrated to America, started to mix, you start seeing definitions change. So that this plane here kept the English name, jack plane, but it took on the German definition of what a jack plane is, which means a general purpose plane. And the Germans did have a general purpose plane called a jack plane. It was about the same size as this plane, with the blade bedded at 45 degrees, and it was used just for general purposes. A dedicated smoothing plane would be about this size, but the blade would be bedded at 50 degrees to help reduce tear out, or what the English would call a York pitch. So this plane kept its English name but took on the German definition. So almost by default, the Americans came up with the foreplane. So it kept up And the American Fore plane, as you can see, is much bigger than even the English Jack plane. It's longer and it's wider. And this will leave a board or a panel very flat. Now, me personally, I prefer using the Fore plane because the less I have to work with my triplane, the better. But you might be wondering which one you should get. Now, I found the scrub plane is really good on boards that aren't uniform. Some boards have a concave side and the other side is convex. But some boards will have the board that's humped on one side and hollowed on the other. And for boards like that, I like using my scrub plane to remove the hump and then go onto the Fore plane. The jack plane I just use for when I need to remove some material on the side of a board, but not enough to actually use my saw. So I actually have a purpose for each one. Now, if you're only going to get one, if you only want one roughing plane, then it really becomes what's more important to you. You'll spend less time removing wood with the scrub plane, but you'll spend a lot more time with your triplane flattening it afterwards. With the Fore plane, you'll spend more time roughing, but you'll spend less time with the triplane. You could just split the difference to get the jack plane, but then you're kind of getting almost the worst of all worlds. So it's really what your mentality is. And now, if you've noticed that my two kids have been making noises, faces, and all types of stuff during the filming of this. This is because before I tried to wait till they were asleep, but usually by that time my wife and I are so tired that we just want to go to bed. Then I tried doing it in my basement, but my basement looks so dark and dingy, it looks like I'm shooting a snuff film there. So I thought I would try to shoot a film with them awake in the light, which, as you can see, is also an abject failure. So anyway, but as any parent watching this will know, that's what life is like with kids. So anyway, that's it. That's the scrub, the jack, and the Fore plane. Get one, get all three. That's up to you, but that's what they're used for. Yeah, all of them have a heavily cambered iron. I thought that was implicit, but I just wanted to say that. So anyway, that's it, and hopefully the next time I'll have my chest done and I'll have less distractions. Bye!